Hello YouTubers, and welcome to yet another Doctor Who action figure review. And as you can see, you're probably thinking, oh my god, it's another Dalek set. And yes, it is a Dalek set. But this is one of my favourite sets, as it is off base on the 1984 story Resurrection of the Daleks. And as you can see, it includes a season 21 5th Doctor, Davros, Supreme Dalek, and a normal Dalek, a scene from this story. So let's start off with the 5th Doctor. Now this 5th Doctor figure is pretty much the same sculpt as the 5th Doctor figures that were released before this. You still have the cream jacket, what he wore throughout his time, and you also can see that he is wearing his celery, something that was absent on the very first release in the first wave back in 2008. But of course, because this is based off season 21, the costumes changed slightly from the Awakening onwards until his final story, The Caves of Androzani. So what happened was his trousers changed. They had more of a red pattern as opposed to just being white with brown and red stripes going down, and I think it really looks nice. I actually prefer this. Also, the shirt underneath here has also got a different pattern as opposed to the shirt what he wore in seasons 19 and 20, as well as Warriors of the Deep. Also, underneath the collar here it is red, whereas under here it is green, and before that it was just red. Also, the dot, the red button, is absent now, which is also correct, and I think everything else is pretty much the same. The shoes, they still have a little sort of wash of brown paint to give it that sort of dirty look, but it doesn't seem as dirty as previous releases from the line, and the back is pretty much the same except for the legs and all of that. The hair should be a bit darker, but I think the hair is just identical to that of the hair pieces used on previous 5th Doctor action figures, but it doesn't really bother me that much. The prototype images for this figure shown that he had a cricket ball, but as you can see he has no accessories, but I'm not really that fussed about that, seeing as he wasn't really a Doctor that used a lot of weapons. I would have liked to see him with a Dalek gun though, which reenacts the scene where he points the gun to Davros's head. And here we just have a comparison of the Wave 1 Peter Davison figure. You can say that they are pretty similar, and side by side you can tell that his costume really did change in season 21, and I myself prefer the season 21 costume. I don't know why. I think it's because it has more redness and just more things happening with the costume than what happens with his costumes in season 19 and 20, and probably because red is my favourite colour as well. So overall, this figure is pretty good and I really like it. If you're wondering about the articulation, it is pretty much the same as the articulation in all the 5th Doctor action figures. So if you want to look back at my action figure review of 5th Doctors, then you can find it on my action figure playlist, or my classic Doctor Who action figure reviews playlist. So that is the 5th Doctor. Next up we have the highlight of this set, which is of course the creator of the Daleks, Davros as he appeared in this story. And in this story he's played by Terry Malloy, and Terry Malloy is just, oh my god, he's really good in this story. He's really good as Davros, although I don't really, I'm not really a fan of Revelation of the Daleks that much. Sorry for those who like that story, but I really do like Remembrance of the Daleks. But this story, probably his standout appearance is this story and Remembrance, because in this story he gives out a lot of speeches. I think it's really good. I think the detail on him captures the essence of this portrayal of Davros. You've got all the wires and things. Yeah, the wires look a bit thick, but if they made them thinner, they'd probably snap in half. That would be pretty crap. So I'm glad that they went down that route. At least they added the wires. They could have just not added them. The chair is nicely sculpted on. It just goes behind his back. And here you can see all of the buttons and, you know, all the panels, what you see in this story. You also have the sculpted plastic made to look like glass, and there's a button here and another button there. It's really nicely detailed. I really like the chair, what he uses in this story. And he has his microphone on his left side, unlike his right side, which it would be in Revelation of the Daleks. And you have the blue eye as well, which is nicely sculpted. And I think the face sculpt is really nice. It looks really lifelike. It just looks like Terry Malloy's Davros. I love it. I really do like the sculpt on his face. It looks outstanding. So great job to character options. And of course the lower half is very nicely detailed as well. It's a new sculpt. The whole figure is like an entirely new sculpt, and apparently it's based on the Michael Wisher Davros from Genesis of the Daleks, but they used the same sculpt for like all of the Davroses from the classic series that have been released as figures, which I think is, you know, it makes sense, I guess. However, you have this thing here, which has purposely been made for the Davros, as you see, from Resurrection of the Daleks. And that is the fact that you can press this button here, so it's this one right here, what I've got my thumb on, and you just press it, and then that pops out. Now, as you can see, you have all the circuitry inside, and it's reminiscent of the scene from this story when Kiston fixes the circuitry on Davros because he's been in stasis for hundreds and thousands of years. So I really like the lengths what character options went to with this figure just to make the little bits of circuitry inside, and it's more or less the same sculpt on all of the Davros figures from the classic series. Yeah, it's a bit inaccurate, seeing as you don't see it in all the other stories like Genesis, Destiny, or Revelation of the Daleks. But I think it's a really nice touch, and the character didn't really have to bother doing it, so I'm really happy that they did that. It's quite a cool touch. And the articulation is not, there's not really that much to talk about, really. Yeah, the head can move a little bit, but can't do a 360, obviously because of the chair and all the wiring and all that. But the arm has an extensive amount of articulation, so you can play around with it. You know, his hands can do a 360, and the elbow and the bicep and the whole arm, you know, it can just move around to your pleasure, so you can make him press his buttons. I just display him with his hand down like that, and I think the sculpting on the hands as well, really nice. So overall, this figure is the highlight of this set, in my opinion, and that's why I would pick up the Resurrection of the Dalek set, because Davros is a brilliant figure. Now on to the Supreme Dalek. Now, this is basically the same sculpt. Every Dalek is more or less the same sculpt, and I really like this. It's got the black and white colour scheme, as you see in this story, and I really like this Dalek. I think it's a really good one. Not really much to talk about in terms of articulation. It's exactly the same. Again, you can have a look at past videos of mine, and it's just the detail really which is different. The paint job, they've done a pretty good job painting the hemispheres white and the mesh underneath here, painting that white, and then they just painted black over it. Also, the eye stalk is a bit shorter. I believe it's a new sculpt. So the eye stalk is a new sculpt, and they've given it white irises and white rings, which is correct, seeing as in this story the Daleks had white rings around the eye stalks, which is fine, you know, it's accurate to the on-screen counterparts. I don't know about the eye though, it seems a bit, I don't know, like on camera it doesn't look as good, but in real life it looks better. It just looks like the pupil of the eye, it looks a bit out of place and it should be more at the centre. It seems out of the centre. There's also another sort of new sculpting on this figure, and that's the lights, the headlights. Now the lamps for the Dalek speech were changed, and really they should have featured on other figures in the line, but this is the first set to do this, and it's the fact that you have actual sculpting. You may be able to tell, you may not, I don't know, but that's what it looks like, and I really like that touch. It's just not the standard like headlights what you see on the Daleks from other releases that released prior to this set, and I really like that touch. It looks more detailed. You may not be able to tell on camera, but if you had this in hand then you'd probably realise what I mean, and this was used pretty much from here on out with more Dalek releases, except for the Daleks from 1960s stories like the Chase set, because thinking of Chase set they just reused the original Dead Planet Dalek sculpt for the lights on the head. The lights on the head are the same on this as well, and there's not as much to talk about with this figure because it looks pretty similar to the normal type of Daleks what you saw throughout the 1970s and throughout the 1980s. It looks similar to the Genesis Dalek, but it's not exactly the same. It's got it looks more blue, if that makes sense, because the Daleks in the story had this sort of dark blue colour rather than a grey colour, which I think is quite nice, and you're just giving it black hemispheres, and yeah, I really like this colour scheme as well. I really like the colour scheme of the Daleks in this story overall, and I think side by side, I think the Supreme Dalek and the normal Dalek look really nice together. So overall I think the Daleks in this set are pretty good. And that's all I have to say about the Resurrection of the Dalek set. What do I think of this set? Well, I think it's probably one of the best sets that Character Options have ever released. It's probably the best Dalek, Davros and Doctor sets that they've ever released in terms of the classic series, because after this set they released a Genesis set, a Revelation set, and a Destiny set. But I think out of the four, this one definitely earns top marks, because what you're getting is a new variant of the Fifth Doctor. You're getting a Davros figure, which at the time was a brand new sculpt because it was reused in the Dalek sets, which I just mentioned. Plus you get two new variations of Daleks, which are the Supreme Dalek, which is one of my favourite types of Dalek in terms of the colour scheme, and also you get this Dalek. Yeah, it may seem like another Genesis Dalek, but if you have this in real life and you compare the two together, you can really tell that this is actually a different Dalek and not just a rehash of a previously released Dalek. So overall, this set is amazing, and I would definitely pick it up, especially if you're a fan of Resurrection of the Daleks. Thank you very much for watching this Doctor Who action figure review. I hope you're having a great day. Stay tuned next time.